Welcome to Real Crime Stories, the podcast where we bring you crime stories from around the world. It was a quiet Saturday night in Santa Monica when a disturbing 911 call came in, panicked, fragmented, and abruptly cut off mid-sentence. Minutes later, a neighbor heard loud crashing noises from a nearby bungalow, the unmistakable sound of furniture being knocked over. No one intervened. No one realized a life might be unraveling behind closed doors. By the following morning, police arrived at the small apartment. What they discovered inside was devastating. A young woman with her whole future ahead of her lay lifeless in her bedroom. The gas had been left on. A candle still burned nearby. Yet there were no signs of forced entry, no shattered windows or broken locks, only silence and unanswered questions. Who had been there that night, and what had truly happened? As investigators began peeling back the layers, they uncovered a story steeped in money, jealousy, and carefully hidden secrets, one that would leave many wondering whether justice was ever fully served. Juliana Redding was born on October 25, 1986, in Dallas, Texas, into a close-knit Catholic family. Raised alongside her younger brother Patrick by her devoted parents, Patricia and Greg Redding, Juliana grew up surrounded by strong values, warmth, and faith. From an early age, she stood out, not only for her striking beauty, but for her joyful spirit and magnetic charm. Her childhood was filled with laughter and ambition, and even as a little girl, she seemed comfortable in adult spaces, often accompanying her grandmother to board meetings and delighting in the formal atmosphere. She loved her dolls, adored working with children, and shared an especially close bond with her brother. At South Point Catholic High School, Juliana thrived. She excelled academically and athletically, participating in track, soccer, theater, and golf, helping lead her school's golf team to a state title. She served on the student council, joined the recycling club, and volunteered as a preschool teacher at her church. Teachers described her as kind, respectful, and a natural leader. Juliana dreamed big. She wanted to be both an entrepreneur and an actress, blending intellect with creativity. By 2005, she had already performed with the Tucson Symphony and landed a role in an independent film titled Kadi, shot in Atlanta. In 2006, determined to chase her Hollywood aspirations, she moved to California, settling into a cozy bungalow-style apartment on Centinela Avenue in Santa Monica, just minutes from the glamour of Beverly Hills. While studying communications at Santa Monica College, Juliana worked as a hostess in upscale restaurants and picked up shifts as a bartender and waitress, always keeping her eyes on opportunities in acting and modeling. With her chestnut hair and captivating looks, she began to draw attention in the entertainment industry. In early 2008, she was reportedly in talks to appear in a Maxim magazine feature, an opportunity that could have changed everything. But her dreams would never be realized. On the night of March 15, 2008, Juliana placed a call to emergency services around 10 p.m. The call abruptly disconnected. Shortly afterward, a neighbor again heard the sound of furniture being knocked over. No one knew then that Juliana may have been fighting for her life. The next day, when Juliana's mother could not reach her by phone, panic set in. Patricia Redding contacted the Santa Monica Police Department and requested a welfare check. Officer Scott Matt Gowan was among the first to arrive. He heard Juliana's dog barking inside the apartment, but there was no response at the door. Then he noticed something deeply troubling. The strong smell of gas. The fire department was called, and officers forced entry. Inside, they found a burner left open, the stove's pilot light extinguished, and a candle still flickering, evidence that the apartment had been filling with gas for hours, creating a serious risk of explosion. From the kitchen, Officer Gowan could see into the bedroom. Juliana lay motionless on the bed. Her body showed signs she had been dead for several hours, including purple discoloration along her lower limbs, an unmistakable indicator of post-mortem lividity. The apartment bore signs of a violent struggle. Investigators collected DNA from door handles, kitchen items, Juliana's clothing, and beneath her fingernails. Early media reports speculated blunt force trauma, but the Los Angeles County coroner later corrected those claims. While the official cause of death remained sealed, authorities confirmed the manner of death was homicide. In a chilling revelation, forensic analysis showed that the DNA under Juliana's fingernails matched her own, suggesting she had clawed at her own neck in a desperate attempt to break free from the grip of someone trying to strangle her. As investigators guarded the details closely, the public mourned the loss of a bright young woman whose life was full of promise. While forensic teams processed evidence, detectives quietly began speaking with those closest to Juliana, hoping her personal relationships might hold the key. One name surfaced quickly: John Gilmore. According to Juliana's father, Greg Redding, John was a man she had dated on and off for 2 years, a relationship he never approved of. Greg told investigators that John had a temper and a history of aggressive behavior. And with that, the investigation took a darker, more personal turn. On more than one occasion, Juliana's relationship with John Gilmore had turned violent. In one incident, he allegedly kicked in the door of her car. In another, he reportedly forced his way into her home following an argument. Given that the vast majority of violent crimes against women are committed by someone they know, police wasted no time bringing Gilmore in for questioning. Gilmore admitted the relationship had been volatile and confirmed that she and Gilmore had argued on the night she was killed. However, he maintained that the dispute took place over the phone. According to him, Juliana became upset when he told her he was going out with friends. He claimed she hung up on him, then left to spend time with one of her own friends. Gilmore told investigators that he attended a house party several miles away that night and continued texting Juliana until around 10 p.m. when her responses suddenly stopped. He said he went to her Santa Monica bungalow the following morning, but left after receiving no answer at the door.
Through the security gate, he claimed he could see a candle flickering inside. Although suspicion initially centered on him, Gilmore was ultimately cleared. Surveillance footage placed him at a store and 2 additional locations that evening, and multiple witnesses confirmed he was at a party during the critical window between 9:45 and 10:15 p.m. Even more significantly, forensic evidence redirected the investigation entirely. The DNA recovered from the crime scene belonged to a woman. With that revelation, detectives began exploring the possibility that someone close to Juliana, perhaps driven by jealousy or resentment, had been responsible. Female acquaintances were questioned, and DNA samples were collected. However, none of them were a match. As the investigation continued, Juliana's family laid her to rest. On March 28th, a funeral mass was held at St. Thomas the Apostle Church in Tucson. Friends, relatives, and former classmates gathered to mourn a young woman remembered not just for her beauty, but for her kindness, ambition, and infectious spirit. Though the case appeared to stall publicly, detectives were quietly digging deeper into Juliana's personal and professional life. That effort soon led them to another influential figure, Dr. Munir Uwaida, a wealthy Lebanese-born surgeon nearly 20 years Juliana's senior. Munir had grown up in Beirut, the son of a prominent physician, and by the time he met Juliana in 2007, he was living an extravagant life in Los Angeles. They met while Juliana was working as a hostess at a high-end restaurant. Captivated by her, Munir offered her a position as an assistant at his medical clinic. She accepted, and before long, their relationship developed into a romantic one. Juliana moved into one of Munir's Beverly Hills properties and began driving a white Range Rover he provided. He lavished her with luxury, designer clothing, watches, lavish vacations, and even once offered to buy her a Lamborghini for her 21st birthday. Friends noted that Munir's affection bordered on obsession. He spoke openly about marriage. Munir also sought to intertwine his life further with Juliana's. He approached her father, Greg Redding, a pharmacist, with a proposal to launch a pharmaceutical venture called Golden State Pharmaceuticals, offering Greg a leadership role as director of the facility. But Juliana, still young and focused on school and acting, eventually began to feel overwhelmed. She ended the relationship and moved into the modest Santa Monica bungalow, a place she could afford only with financial help from her father. Despite the breakup, she remained in contact with Munir and had recently joined him and friends on a birthday trip to Las Vegas. That connection ended abruptly when Greg discovered something disturbing. Munir was married and had 3 children living in Lebanon. Feeling deceived, Juliana cut off all contact. Business negotiations between Munir and Greg, however, continued until March 2008. Shortly before Juliana's death, Greg withdrew from the deal after his attorneys raised concerns about the company's legality and structure. A formal letter ended their involvement, stating that while the financial compensation was tempting, it carried unacceptable ethical and professional risks. Munir's legal team later claimed it was he who terminated the negotiations. Just days later, Juliana Redding was dead. Investigators considered whether the failed business deal could be connected to the murder, but Munir had a solid alibi. He was out of the country at the time of her death, and once again, the forensic evidence pointed not to a man, but to a woman. Though cleared as a direct suspect, Dr. Munir Uwaida remained firmly on investigators' radar. Police began to suspect that someone within his inner circle may have played a role. Their focus soon narrowed to a woman who worked closely with him, Kelly Sue Park. At 44 years old, Kelly was a real estate agent and served as Munir's personal assistant across several business ventures. What immediately alarmed detectives was her financial history. Beginning in June 2008, Kelly received more than $1 million from Munir over 18 months. Most striking was a $250,000 payment she received just 3 weeks before Juliana's murder, an amount of money that raised a red flag. Investigation intensified. In one operation, investigators recovered a discarded cigarette Kelly had smoked. DNA testing delivered a chilling result. Her genetic profile matched the DNA found at the crime scene. On June 17, 2010, more than 2 years after Juliana Redding's death, authorities made their move. Kelly Sue Park and her partner, Ronnie, were arrested without incident in California. Although public records listed Kelly Sue Park and her partner as residents of Thousand Oaks, Kelly was transported to Los Angeles, where she appeared in court on June 21. Prosecutors charged her with the 2008 murder of Juliana Redding, alleging that she entered Juliana's Santa Monica bungalow on the night of March 15 and violently assaulted her, causing her death. Bail was set at $1 million. If convicted, Kelly faced a sentence of 25 years to life in prison. Her partner, Ronnie, was also taken into custody, but was later released without charges. For a public that had grown frustrated by years of secrecy, the case took an even more startling turn. Just 2 days after Kelly's arrest, Dr. Munir Uwaida vanished from Los Angeles. Investigators believed he had fled to Beirut, though at the time he faced no formal charges in connection with Juliana's death. In October 2010, a secret grand jury convened over 3 days to evaluate the evidence against Kelly. For nearly 2 years, the proceedings remained sealed. Then, in December, the Los Angeles Times obtained and published portions of the transcript, exposing critical details to the public for the first time.
Jurors heard testimony from detectives, forensic analysts, and the medical examiner. They described a violent struggle inside Juliana's apartment and an apparent attempt to erase the crime. Prosecutors argued that the gas left running and the candles burning were part of a calculated effort to trigger an explosion, one meant to destroy evidence and conceal the murder. The forensic pathologist detailed the extent of Juliana's injuries. Her body was covered in bruises and abrasions. Capillaries in her eyes had ruptured, a classic indicator of strangulation, and the bones in her neck were crushed. Scratch marks beneath her chin were determined to be self-inflicted, made as she desperately clawed at her attacker's hands in a final attempt to breathe. The DNA evidence was extensive and damning. Analysts testified that Kelly's DNA was found on Juliana's skin, clothing, cell phone, a stove knob, and even in a droplet of blood on a dish. Her fingerprints appeared on multiple surfaces throughout the apartment. Adding another unexpected layer to the case was the discovery of saliva belonging to actor Brian Van Holt on Juliana's body. Granted immunity, he testified before the grand jury and admitted to having an intimate relationship with Juliana, stating they had been together the night before her death. Despite that connection, investigators found no evidence linking him to the murder. Prosecutors acknowledged that Kelly and Juliana had likely never met. What bound them, they argued, was Dr. Munir Uwaida. According to the prosecution's theory, Kelly acted as Munir's enforcer, sent to intimidate Juliana or pressure her father, Greg Redding, into reviving a pharmaceutical business deal that had collapsed just days earlier. Standing nearly 6 feet tall and physically imposing, Kelly was described by prosecutors as Munir's female James Bond. The timing of the 6-figure payment she received shortly before Juliana's death, followed by another large transfer to her relatives just before her arrest, was portrayed as far too precise to be coincidental. Yet even as the grand jury heard a compelling narrative, troubling questions lingered. How had investigators identified Kelly after so much time had passed? And what had caused a plan of intimidation, if that was the goal, to escalate to lethal violence? As Kelly Sue Park's case drew national attention, her defense attorney offered a simple explanation for the staggering sums of money she had received. According to the defense, Kelly was merely Dr. Munir Uwaida's personal real estate agent, nothing more. Prosecutors disagreed. To them, Munir, the former lover of Juliana Redding, was the shadow looming over every aspect of the case. They noted that he fled the United States on the very day Kelly was arrested, but without direct evidence tying him to the crime, no recorded communications, no financial trail explicitly ordering violence, and no physical presence, prosecutors were forced to focus their case on Kelly alone. And the physical evidence, they argued, was overwhelming. Kelly's DNA was found on nearly every surface inside Juliana's Santa Monica bungalow, on her body, her clothing, her phone, the stove knob, and even in a droplet of blood on a dish. Convinced by the forensic trail, the grand jury voted to indict. There was enough evidence to proceed to trial. When the trial finally began in 2013, jurors were once again walked through the final violent moments of Juliana Redding's life. Police officers, forensic experts, and pathologists described a brutal struggle, a failed attempt to ignite an explosion using gas and candlelight, and an assault so severe it crushed the young woman's neck. The prosecution presented a chilling narrative, grounded in DNA, fingerprints, and forensic science. They argued that Kelly had been sent to intimidate Juliana, and possibly her father, into resurrecting a failed pharmaceutical business deal. But despite the science, the case carried a fatal weakness. It lacked a clear motive and a complete story. Why would a woman with no known history of violence commit such a brutal crime? After more than a week of deliberations, the jury reached its decision. In June 2013,
Kelly Sue Park was found not guilty of the murder of Juliana Redding. The courtroom erupted. Kelly, now 47 years old, broke down in tears as the verdict was read. Her supporters cried openly, embracing one another in relief. Just a few rows behind them, Juliana's family and friends reacted very differently, sobbing in anguish, stunned by disbelief. Some shouted toward Kelly, telling her to go to hell. Others accused the jury of turning justice into a mockery. The jurors themselves exited the courthouse through a back entrance, shielded from reporters. They offered no public explanation for their verdict. In the days that followed, Kelly's defense attorney defended the outcome. He argued that prosecutors had leaned too heavily on DNA evidence while failing to explain motive. DNA, he said, can place someone at a scene, but it cannot explain intent, timing, or purpose. According to the defense, the prosecution never delivered a complete logical story that the jury could believe. Juliana's parents strongly disagreed. In a written statement, they said the evidence against Kelly was overwhelming and that their daughter had died at the crossroads of a failed romance and a shadowy business deal. To them, justice had slipped away. But the story did not end in that courtroom. Just over 2 years later, in August 2015, Kelly Sue Park was arrested again, this time alongside 12 others tied to the criminal network of Dr. Munir Uwaida. The charges were sweeping: conspiracy, insurance fraud, aggravated assault, and performing unauthorized medical procedures. Prosecutors alleged the scheme defrauded insurance companies of more than $150 million. By then, Munir had lost his California medical license. Prosecutors claimed he allowed unqualified assistants to perform surgeries, while patients were led to believe he was the one operating. Kelly pleaded not guilty and was released on $1.5 million bail. Though none of the new charges directly implicated her in Juliana's murder, the allegations echoed themes raised years earlier, that Kelly and Munir had built a complex, deceptive medical empire together. The fraud case dragged on for years, marked by delays, dismissals, and reinstated charges. Then, in May 2020, in a stunning and unexplained decision, the Los Angeles Superior Court ordered all charges against Kelly and several co-defendants dismissed. The reason was sealed. The judge offered no public explanation. For Juliana Redding's family, it was another devastating blow. More than a decade after her death, no one had been held criminally responsible. Juliana's mother, Patricia, an artist who had passed her creativity on to her daughter, found solace in painting. Through her art, she sought connection, keeping Juliana's memory alive through color, movement, and quiet reflection. Legal justice may never come, but Juliana Redding's story endures, a haunting reminder of how ambition, obsession, and money can intertwine with devastating consequences, and how sometimes, even when the truth feels undeniable, it is still not enough to convict. Thank you for watching Real Crime Stories. Share your thoughts on the story, like and subscribe to the channel. Until the next episode, stay safe.